Okay, there we go. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another edition of United Way for Southeastern Michigan's What's the Word Wednesday, where we have important conversations and share important resources about the topics that matter most to you. My name is Shayla Zimmerman, and today we are going to wrap up our winter resource series with a discussion focused on providing client-empowered care to domestic violence survivors. A few reminders for today's discussion. We hope to have time for a few questions from the audience, so please put your questions in the chat box on Zoom or into the comment section on Facebook if you're watching on Facebook Live. Closed captions are enabled in Zoom and Facebook Live. To turn them on, please click the Show Captions button at the bottom of your screen. Before we start today, we do want to recognize how heavy this topic may be for many of our audience members. So if you need support, we encourage you to reach out. Throughout this town hall, we have shared, or we will share this slide, the support slide that's up on the screen right now, that lists many partners working with survivors in Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Washtenaw County. We've listed 2 national hotlines as well. And as always, 211 is there to support you, to connect you to resources, and they are available to you 24/7, 365. Every year in the United States, over 10 million men and women face sexual assault, physical violence, and/or stalking from an intimate partner. During the winter, survivors are met with even more obstacles when trying to reach safety and stability. I'd like to introduce you to our speaker for today, Lori Kitchen Bushell. Lori is the executive director of First Step, a nonprofit serving domestic violence and sexual assault survivors in Wayne County for over 40 years. Born and raised in Metro Detroit, Lori's career and family is a testament to her passion for social justice through philanthropy, women's leadership, human safety and security, and nonprofit management. She earned her Bachelor's of Arts from American University in Politics and Women-Focused Public Policy, and worked for the U.S. Agency on International Development. After 7 years in Washington, Lori returned to Michigan to work with United Way for Southeastern Michigan, us, the Michigan Women's Foundation, Nonprofit Enterprise at Work, and Wayne County Safe. In these roles, she led education and advocacy campaigns on basic needs, 211, food access, human trafficking, and diverse fundraising initiatives. At First Step, Lori is able to merge all of her passions to support survivors. Welcome, Lori. Thank you so much for being here today. We're really looking forward to the discussion about how to find power in domestic violence survivorship.
Thank you, Shayla. Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for having me today and for joining us. Again, I'm Lori Kitchen-Bushell. I'm Executive Director of First Step. We can go to the next slide. And go ahead and go to the next one. So today, I just want to lay out a little bit of groundwork. We, as the domestic and sexual assault service provider for Wayne County, we provide comprehensive services across the county, and we'll talk a little bit more about what all of those are. But we've been doing this for over 45 years. On average, we serve about 7,000 survivors in Wayne County each year. And so I think that some people don't realize the magnitude of this in our communities. And that's just in the Wayne County area. That doesn't include our sister counties and our sister agencies that were on the earlier slide, who are also serving in all of southeastern Michigan. United Way has been a long-term partner of First Step and other domestic and sexual violence agencies. The support from United Way has allowed us to leverage resources and have additional ways to remove barriers for survivors, but also through grant programs and funding, they've supported our shelter and our basic safety net services. So we're very grateful to United Way for the ongoing partnership. Next. Again, these are some of our sister agencies and a few national agencies that people can turn to for services. But I want to set a little bit of a tone to understand there are several nonprofit and partner agencies that have an arm or a leg or some sort of programming that they're doing around domestic and sexual violence in our area. There are many culturally specific agencies that we partner with and work with. but we are the comprehensive service provider. And those noted on this are our sister agencies in other counties that are those counties' comprehensive service providers. Now, we see people from outside of Wayne County based off of our location or who comes to us. We don't turn anybody away. The same goes for all of those partners as well at Save House or La Casa or Haven or Turning Point, but we do kind of have our primary region in which we serve it. And so we are very similar in a lot of the programs we offer. We're very similar in the way we are funded. All of us have been around for a long time. And we also are heavily regulated by the funding sources that we receive. So because we receive federal and state funding, we are audited, we have compliance monitoring, we have quality assurance monitoring. We're very heavily regulated and very much held accountable to doing the highest level service provision that we can based off of the fact that we are the comprehensive service providers for the counties that we're serving. Next. So again, we're going to go over a little bit today. We've already kind of touched on who we are. We'll talk a little bit more about some of our programming. We're going to talk about how we approach empowering survivors as they work with us. We're going to talk about some of the unique challenges and then also the gaps and what we're doing to address them. And when we talk about the unique challenges, we'll be touching on, the winter months and, what additional barriers and challenges that puts on us. Next. So just real quick overview, our mission is to eliminate both domestic and sexual violence to provide comprehensive services to individuals and families impacted by these crimes. And then you'll see our values along the spectrum there. They are mostly self-explanatory, but if anybody has questions, we can talk about those later. Next. So these are some of our services, and all of our services are free. And they're all for anybody who has been harmed by or is healing from domestic and sexual violence. So we provide services to kids 3 and up. We do have kids younger within our shelter program and transitional housing, but our direct advocacy and counseling services are for children 3 and up. We have a 24-hour crisis line. That's our primary intake line as well. And so if anybody is looking for resources or needing emergency support or is in crisis, that's your number one go-to. And we'll share that number in a little bit. We have a shelter in the city of Wayne where we have about 45 beds available for survivors and their pets. We have an animal shelter on site because we recognize that leaving your animal behind is a barrier, and it's also an increased likelihood of violence towards that animal. We have done a lot of education and partnership around the intersect of domestic violence and animal abuse. And so that is something that we take very seriously in recognizing the whole family also includes the pets. We have a transitional supportive housing program. That's a program where we pay the rent for survivors for up to 2 years, and they are within this ongoing wraparound service program. And it's usually an individual with children. We have our counseling, advocacy, and support. We do safety planning. We do removal of barriers. So we try to meet basic needs around transportation, food, clothing, and all of that. We do personal protection orders. We do criminal court advocacy and also resources and referrals. But I think one of the most interesting programs, well, not most interesting, but one of the most systems change programs we have is our community response program. And will you go ahead and go to the next slide? So our community response program, this gives you an idea of where we're embedded throughout Wayne County. Our community response program is where we have advocates who are actually placed within police jurisdictions and court jurisdictions across Wayne County. This allows them to receive reports immediately of anything that's come in related to domestic and sexual violence, and also be in the court system to provide advocacy to survivors as they're coming through the court system. What makes it a little different is when you have a social worker or you have an advocate who is an employee of the police or of the court, they're, in that space where they are working for the court to prosecute or the police to, protect and serve. With us being there, we're able to be 100% for the client. So it is the survivor who we support, it is the survivor who we help navigate the service, and it is the survivor that we are there to serve. And so this, we're in about 70% of Wayne County. We also have our different standalone offices. In Plymouth, we have our admin and advocacy and counseling office. In Wayne, we have our non-residential office where we do advocacy and counseling too, but we also have our shelter there. We have a Lincoln Park office. We also have a Detroit-based office, and we'll talk a little bit about where we see our growth in Detroit as well. Next. And again, there is our hotline. So if all else fails, that's how you reach us. That's your number one way to get through to us. Next. Okay, so who is impacted by domestic and sexual violence? Many people think this is a woman's issue. Many people think we are a woman's shelter. That is not true. We serve everybody, all different backgrounds, all different ages, all different gender identities, all different cultural identities. We serve everybody. Again, we are the comprehensive service provider. We are meant to be culturally competent, but we are not culturally specific. We partner with many agencies and smaller culturally specific nonprofits and organizations that do service very specific cultural identities, but we serve everybody, and it's our job to be a space that everybody can seek and have services. We have had men in shelter. We've had men with children in shelter. We have people with different gender expressions in shelter. So most of our survivors, especially those coming into shelter, are women with children. But that is not, we are not exclusive. That is not all we take. There are some shelters, I don't know that there's any still in Southeastern Michigan, but there's some shelters that do not take men. And there are some shelters that don't take teenage boys after a certain age into their facility. We do not do that. We accept everybody and we keep families together. Our shelter is set up so that every person has their own room and their own suite. So a family is together within their own space where they have their own bathroom and a small kitchenette and all of that, as well as shared space throughout the shelter. So that allows us to be able to keep a family unit together and lower, any sort of challenges that may come with shared spaces. Next. So we also have a really strong value system around how we empower survivors. And this is where I'm going to spend a couple minutes. I'm looking at my time too, so I want to make sure I get through everything I wanted to. So we always place the survivor as the person in control. Survivors have had tons of control removed from them. And so as soon as we are able, we want to give them as much control back. Different ways in which we do that. When a survivor comes into shelter, we believe food is culture and food is control. So we have an open kitchen space. We provide food access that is not locked up. We meet the needs and requests for food if there's specific dietary needs or cultural needs or religious practices that are happening. We meet those needs for that survivor, but everything is available. There's no hours on the kitchen. There's no, this is when you can eat and this is when you can't eat. You might work in the middle of the night. You might have an infant who gets you up at 4 a.m. or a toddler who needs a snack or a teenager who eats around the clock. We don't dictate that. Everybody is able to move freely within that space as if it is their home. Again, we don't lock things up. We've heard, concerns about, well, what about stealing? What about hoarding? All of that. Those are trauma responses. And so we don't create broad policies around the space in which people are in based off of trauma responses. We identify and work with survivors who may be responding in that way to support them in understanding and creating security for them within that. And so we've been able to be very successful within these models for a long time. We also don't have curfews. That's not always common either in shelter spaces. Now, that does not mean that we don't expect people to be safe and come back and use the space. If we find that somebody has a room and they haven't been around, then we're going to have a discussion with them about, where are you? Do you need this room? There are other people who do. And that is a one-on-one navigated, conversation. It is, but we don't create punitive spaces. Also, outside of our shelter space, it could look like in the court system, police in the court will really want a survivor to prosecute. A survivor may not want to. And we, as their advocate, are there to support them through that. Now, we know a survivor who feels safe, protected, and their needs are met are more likely to prosecute than a survivor who doesn't. So us being able to support that survivor might make them more likely to take those steps. But ultimately, we are always there for the survivor, whether we agree with them or not, whether we think it's the best choice or not. They're in control, and it's our job to support them and make sure they are aware of their options and back up the options that they choose for themselves and their family. Next. So winter's impact on survivors. So there's a lot of things that happen. Holidays are a great example of some of the challenges. Around the holidays, a lot of our basic services have shorter hours. They have shorter accessibility. A lot of people are out. We found just recently at this holiday season at the end of December that we were really struggling with people needing housing, people who were coming in. We see a lot of people come to us through the homelessness system. Because domestic violence is the #1 cause of homelessness. They are completely intertwined and intersected. If home's not safe, you will likely be homeless. And so we see that there would be less housing options available in the winter, less hours available for housing support. And so we were getting a lot of calls and need to kind of fill some of those gaps on our 24-hour hotline and help support survivors who were not able to go through typical routes that they would have through COCs and stuff at the time. School breaks means everybody's home, and school is a huge intervention point for violence in the home. When kids are in school, teachers are mandated reporters. They also see kids on a regular basis. They're able to notice changes. They're also often a place that children disclose. So not only with school breaks, but when you think back with COVID, when school shut down, there's a huge concern for the isolation that happened for kids and the inability of normal intervention that potentially would happen in a in a environment where you have mandated reporters who are interacting with children on a regular basis. Temperature drops means staying in your car and staying outside or just going wherever you need to go isn't safe. You have people at home when there is more stress, when there is more intimacy, when everybody's locked inside. It can increase the safety risk within the home. It can also cause there to be a lack of access to reach out for help. So if you're all home together, you're not gonna be able to make that phone call when you need to get help. Next. So I'm going to share a little bit, because I'm getting close to my time, on some of the barriers and gaps we also see in our region. So we, as I said, we're serving 7,000 survivors each year in Wayne County mostly. We see about 30 to 50% of our calls to our hotline, especially for shelter, coming from the city of Detroit. And a lot of our sister agencies have reported similar numbers of about 20 to 50% of their calls are coming from the city of Detroit. We've known for a long time that we do not have enough shelter beds for domestic and sexual assault survivors in southeastern Michigan at all. And we especially do not have enough for the need within the city of Detroit. So before COVID, we were seeing about 100 families a month calling our hotline looking for domestic and sexual assault services, specifically shelter. And we were unable to house them because we were always full. We are always full. All of our sister agencies are always full. If there's any listening or out there today, I'm sure that they can confirm we are always full, and we have calls that we have to do safety planning, we have to do alternative planning, we do some hoteling. There's not tons of funding for it. We do everything we can to keep people safe, but we are always full. Since the pandemic started, we're now seeing 200 families on average every month call for shelter. And again, we're still always full. We also recently, I was at a state convening of different agency directors that are serving domestic and sexual violence across the state, and they were asked, how many of you are housing people from the city of Detroit? And this is across the state, all the way up to the UP. And almost every provider in that room across the state of Michigan who does domestic and sexual assault shelter raised their hand. So we also know that the services are not rich enough and are not available enough within the city of Detroit, that survivors are being displaced across the state. Now, in some circumstances, a survivor getting out of the community they're in can make them safer. But in most circumstances, it creates additional barriers. It gets them away from their support systems. It gets their kids out of the schools where they have support systems. It can cause problems if they are employed. It creates additional barriers to move them out of the community that they are in. So it is not ideal that we have our survivors from the city of Detroit having to go across the state for services. So next. So here's what we're trying to do to help solve that gap. Many of you, if you're in the Detroit, southeastern Michigan area, are familiar with the Samaritan Center on the east side of Detroit off of 94 and Connor. It's an old hospital that is owned by Sur Metro, and it has been completely renovated into a community hub. And there is a 2-wing old hospital unit that has 21 rooms that we have signed a lease on, that we are renovating to be able to turn into shelter. We're probably about a year-ish from being able to open this project, but we are moving forward on it. We have signed a 10-year lease to do this. We went back and forth around, should we try to look for land and buy something and purchase something? But the reality was, this is a incredible community hub that already has supportive services for survivors like WIC, like Head Start, like housing services. There is a high school on the property. Like it has so many complementary services that our survivors can benefit from, that we felt there wasn't a better way to do it. Plus, instead of doing a huge capital campaign to find something on our own, we could get this open a lot faster with less money. So here's a little kind of teaser. Don't marry the white furniture. I told the architect that we won't be having furniture and shelter, but this is a little teaser of what our vision is and what we see coming. You can go ahead to the next pictures. So again, it would be units that are very flexible, individual families in each unit. It wouldn't be shared spaces. So a single would have a single, but a family would have a family unit. We want to put in a hair salon so that people can work on, we can have people come in and donate services, but also to create more sense of community in the space. Go ahead. Okay, so anyways, that's the plan for Detroit. We're at 10:25, and that's when I said I would stop for questions. And so again, here's ways to connect.
Wow, thank you so much, Lori. And yeah, I can see like if anyone does want to connect, with First Step, their contact information is on that slide and we'll drop it in the chat as well. And follow them on social media. Thank you, Lori. That information was so helpful, and I'm so excited for the new location on the east side. I'm an East Side Detroiter, so I'm very excited for that. It's very much needed, and I think it'll be welcomed. So we do have a few questions for you, Lori. Thank you for giving us some time. For our audience, if you do have any questions, please add them to the chat, and we will do our best to get to them. So I actually wanted to ask a question that I was thinking of as you were presenting, and I was really impressed with how you talked about being culturally competent, being anti-racist, anti-oppression, and how you found ways to work through trauma responses. And so I was wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about the connection between those values and client power. Like, what is that? Can you make that connection for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody is going to heal and feel safe in their own sort of way, and we can't take their identity out of that. their identities and their belief systems and their culture is going to also dictate some of the choices that they're going to make for themselves. So just as simply as I touched upon with food being a part of their culture, if you're coming into shelter and you can't practice your religious beliefs or you can't eat the food that is culturally normal to you, you're not going to feel your full self in control in that space. But also you may, religion might be really important to you. Healing spaces with people who understand your culture might be really important to you. And so that is why we, again, are the inclusive provider, but we recommend, refer, partner with, and make sure we have resources to those who are creating those safe spaces to fully allow for healing and understanding for those survivors in which that is an important part of their journey. There's also special barriers that come on to people. If you have immigrated here to the United States, you're going to need additional support. If you don't have family, you're going to need additional support. And so being able to partner with the communities that are supportive of those cultural backgrounds are going to help
Absolutely.
you find your family and your community safer within this space, within our county.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lori. That's incredible work to do and to hold that as a value. It sounds like you're really practicing that. We did get a couple questions about this in the chat. And so folks are wanting to know, do you have any needs in regards to clothing or food or even volunteers? Can you talk a little bit more about your volunteer program?
Yep, absolutely. So we have a really wonderful and robust volunteer program. You can find out more about it on our website. You do have to go through an application process and some training, and then depending on your interest level, we'll match you to different opportunities. There's vast opportunities, long-term volunteer, opportunities, one-off volunteer opportunities, ways that you can get involved with our events versus ways that you can get involved with helping in the animal shelter. So we have a lot of different volunteer opportunities. As far as clothing goes, we actually defer to our partners because we don't have a lot of place to house clothing. And so there's other resources in the community, such as the Salvation Armies and the Goodwills and everything, that we defer clothing resources to because we just don't have a place to keep it all. But we do help support access to clothing and everything for our survivors. And we do take some new items like jackets and things, but again, we don't have huge space to hold on to all of it to make sure those who need it. But we also publish every Wednesday on our social media. It's called Wishlist Wednesday, and it's our biggest request of things for the week that is needed by survivors or our programs. So it could be something as simple as an alarm clock, but we post what we need and what the biggest requests are every Wednesday. And that's been a great way that the community's been able to engage and support, needs within the shelter.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, Lori. And I did have one final question. I'm just curious if we have folks that might be experiencing domestic violence or intimate partner violence that are watching this town hall, what would you want to tell them?
So first, I want to say that our job is to believe you, and that's number one. We believe you no matter what. We don't judge, we don't question. We believe you. You're in charge, and we're here for you wherever you are. You may not be able to leave, you may not be ready to leave, but we have services that can help. You may be ready to leave, and we have services that can help. So our job is to believe you and support you wherever you are and whatever you need. And so I encourage you to reach out to us, whether it's just to get some information or if it's for more severe support. We are here and you're in charge.
Thank you so much, Lori, for those words of wisdom and care. And thank you, Lori, for being and joining us today. This has been really insightful to how our communities are addressing domestic violence and intimate partner violence. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Before we close, I do have a few more announcements for our audience. So as a reminder for anyone in our community who may be experiencing a need, our 211 helpline remains available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This includes resources like food, utility assistance, and much more. We always maintain a running list of available services in the community and can connect you to the support you need. You can also look up any resources in your area by using our 211 resource database. at unitedwaysem.org/211. One of the best ways to give back during this time of year, during the winter season, is to get involved in your community as a volunteer. United Way's volunteer portal can help. Our online portal lets you search for volunteer opportunities that best match your abilities, interests, and needs. It even lets you set up alerts for the types of volunteer projects and organizations you care most about. Visit unitedwaysem.org/volunteer to get started. And lastly, to conclude our Black History Month, our next What's the Word Wednesday Town Hall will be on February 28th and focus on the current and historical contributions of our local Black farmers and gardeners. We recently had a talk with Dr. Finn Bell and Master Gardener Patricia Wells on our Washtenaw United radio segment. So we'll make sure to send that out as well. Be sure to tune in for that town hall next week and more coming up. To stay updated on our upcoming topics and watch replays of previous town halls, please visit unitedwaysem.org/virtual town halls. And before we close, we are going to leave this support slide up for a few minutes for anyone who may be seeking support in their situation. This support slide lists many partners that Lori talked about today in Wayne, Oakland, Macomb, and Washtenaw County. And we've listed 2 national hotlines, and 211 is available to you 24/7. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay warm and continue to live united.